Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Happy Friday, Mike.
Happy Friday, Phil. Glad to be with all of you guys out there on another episode of Random Waypoints. And we've got, as always, a lot to talk about today. Obviously not the least of which is Iran. So probably a lot of this is going to have to do with that, right, Phil?
Absolutely. First, we have a more important topic, which is about dating.
Oh, well, I mean, that's always more important than Iran, for sure.
So check it out, Mike. New genetic research suggests that when humans and Neanderthals interbred tens of thousands of years ago, it was most often human women choosing Neanderthal men as partners. Scientists can see this pattern in how DNA appears on the X chromosome in both species. Mike, does it surprise you that modern genetics suggests that these ancient pairings may have been driven largely by women's choices?
It's always a women's choice. I mean, come on. No, guys don't make choices. So it's interesting. I read the same article, and then I looked at another article that talked about, because, okay, so in fairness, I'm going to just tell you what I thought when I read the article the first time. So I read the article, and I hear human women mating with Neanderthal men. Now, unknowns to me, I assumed incorrectly that, and this is what my brain said. My brain goes, oh, we got a bunch of Neanderthal guys going around. I don't want to say raping women, but like they were more aggressive, stronger than human men, and they were taking advantage, or the women were more attracted to these big, beefier Neanderthals, whatever. So I did some research on that. Actually, was wrong. What I found out was humans and Neanderthals were very complementary, obviously similar species. Neither one necessarily was more intelligent than the other, and I thought it the other way around. I always thought the humans were more intelligent. Not the case, and in fact, not necessarily was one physically stronger than the other either. So that kind of blew my whole mindset out the window. But I mean, to answer your question, no, I mean, I think women are making the decisions today. So I think they're that the fact that they were making them a million years ago doesn't surprise me.
Well, what sticks out to me is nothing's changed. Like you said, they make the choice. But in my opinion, they're making the same choice. You go on YouTube and listen to some of these dating channels and everything, and that's one of the major discussions about how women choose wrong, and they go for the brute, they go for the thug, they go for the gangster, they go for the tough guy, the bad boy. So it's the same thing. I think it's a natural genetic thing for you to go for the brute, go for the tough guy, go for the guy that you feel that will be able to protect you. I did a little research too, and I got what you said about not being too different mentally and stuff like that, but there was a difference in bone density and bone structure. So you were looking at the guy, a Neanderthal wasn't like extremely larger than a regular guy, but you could absolutely pick out the Neanderthal from a human. So women were picking the bigger, better guy that they felt could protect them. And I do think that there was violence. I do think there was, taking of sex also.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I read was that humans tended to be a little bit more communal, meaning that they were a little bit more likely to form bonds with more people and create systems. And the Neanderthals were a little bit more nomadic, and they were a little bit more solitary. So
better hunters too.
And better hunters. So that may be to the point.
So check this out, Mike. The Supreme Court just made a unanimous decision written by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson about how asylum cases are reviewed. The court said that when someone challenges a deportation order, federal courts have to largely defer to the immigration judge who originally heard the case, unless the evidence clearly shows that the judge was wrong. That means immigration judges' decisions will carry more weight and could make it harder to overturn deportations. So, Mike, why do you think the Supreme Court was unanimous on this decision when that's a rarity these days?
That sure is. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, one of the I don't want to say this, but I almost feel like they're throwing it back on the lower courts or the lower or the immigration judges to deal with it, and they don't want to. It's like a hot potato. I mean, I think that might be part of it.
I agree with that. They've literally got to stop all of these protest judges with their decisions, and they've got to slow some of the traffic coming to them. They pick a handful of cases, but a lot of people don't realize they get literally thousands and thousands of cases. And with the immigration being such a big subject now, they're being inundated with a huge amount of immigration cases that really don't need a decision. So
right.
I think they're just tired of these cases, and it's obvious that people are just filibustering.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, but it'll be interesting to watch going forward to see how and if this changes, the deportation process or the immigration process. So we'll have to pay attention to that one.
So does this ruling mean fewer asylum cases will succeed on appeal, in your opinion?
Based on the past year under the Trump administration, I would say yes.
Because the way Ketanji Brown worded it, it's basically like, don't you dare bring this case to us unless it's just glowingly wrong.
Right. Yep.
So do you agree with the decision or not?
Well, I mean, I agree in a sense that there is I don't know if this, you tell me if you agree, but there seems to be this rush lately of trying to get everything to end up at the Supreme Court, particularly when it comes to the two parties and politically fighting back and forth. That's what they mention almost from day one, before we were even talking about the regular court and a circuit court and appeals process. They're like, they're talking about the Supreme Court right from the beginning. And obviously this is one body. It can only handle so many cases.
Well, what's happening, and we could literally do a podcast on the Supreme Court and why that happens. But the basic reason is the judgments that the Supreme Court aren't true judgments. They're basically they set the tone for judgments, and they set the precedence, which is the word. And so people keep throwing these cases at them, hoping that they make a judgment about something where there's a precedent so that they can't go back on something. So they're trying to get a lot of social issues passed that way, and they're trying to get a lot of immigration things passed that way, hoping that the Supreme Court trips up on itself and sets a precedent. So I think this was an excellent thing where they're not making any kind of decision. There's no precedent for you to make.
Yep.
So, Mike, Texas Democrats just knocked out one of their own loudest and obnoxious voices. Jasmine Crockett just lost her Senate primary to State Rep James Talarico. Some Democrats are probably breathing a sigh of relief, while plenty on the right are celebrating her loss. But here's the irony. Crockett might have been the easier candidate for Republicans to beat in November. So if you're on the right, shouldn't you actually be a little disappointed she's not the nominee?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's so far left that she would have been the easier one to beat, particularly in Texas. I think the celebration comes around that, maybe there would be less noise from this far left progressive movement. But we'll see. I mean, personally, I think the Republicans will probably hold that or win that seat anyways in Texas, regardless of which one gets the nominee eventually. But we'll have to, once again, that's another thing to look at. But I think it's an example of the Democrats are probably breathing a sigh of relief, because I think most mainstream Democrats, particularly ones that are smart enough to try to bring in the independent voters in the middle, know that she's a no-go. She's a non-starter.
I think that some people who initially supported her don't even really like it. Everybody likes when people have that moment where they speak up and right. They go crazy, but they don't want that to be you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, exactly. That's her totally, 100%.
Right. And the sad part is it's not actually even her. She cosplaying a ghetto girl.
Yep.
Which is another reason
That's actually a good way of putting it.
You have a lot of black people who were insulted by her.
Yep.
In her actions. I think most people find it very condescending when you start trying to talk like them and act like them and relate to them, and there's a big divide between you and them.
Yep.
So do you think Talarico signals Democrats shifting toward an electability strategy rather than viral moments?
Unfortunately, no. I think that I don't think so. I think in that particular election, yes, and that may be partly because it's Texas, but no, nationwide I would say no. I don't think that they've latched on to that degree of intelligence yet.
I think that Trump has ruined politics, and I mean it in this way. He did something that is attractive to other politicians. He did something that other politicians are trying to do, and it's a one-off thing. It's Trump can get away with talking like the way he talk and acting the way because it's authentic. And you have all of these other people that are trying to, talk like him, be obnoxious, and it's not the same. It's just like if you have a group of friends, there's one loudmouth guy that everybody is totally cool with and they don't care that he's a loudmouth. But if you started talking like him, everybody be like, "What's wrong with you, Mike?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
So I think both sides of the aisle are going to have to realize, especially going into 2028, that Trump was a one-off, and y'all better go back to talking respectfully and being sensible.
Amen to that.
So, Mike, Congress has not formally declared war since 1942 during World War II. And the last time Congress authorized a war was in 2002 when it approved the invasion of Iraq. Now, in 2026, the United States Senate just voted 53-47 to reject a resolution that would have required congressional approval before further United States attacks on Iran. Looking at that vote and looking at history, it seems like Congress is allowing the president to move forward. Mike, does the vote show that Washington is backing Trump's ability to continue military action against Iran?
I don't know that the vote shows anything, to be honest with you, because if you read between the lines of what the bill actually said, it was supposed to. It didn't say that he needed authorization. It said he needed to go to Congress to ask for it. So there's a small difference between asking and needing. But on top of that, this was divided largely along party lines. So it's another political thing. I mean, I think it's pretty clear by the law that he needs approval if this thing goes on more than the 6 months that he's allotted under law. But, I'm not going to suggest that I'm, all-seeing eye here, but we're pretty good at making predictions. I mean, my opinion is that Trump does not believe that this is a 6-month thing. I mean, he believes that it's a much shorter time window. So I think he doesn't think he needs authorization. And largely I would agree with that.
I think that he does think it's going to go on longer, and I think that he has history backing him that he can be successful in that. Historically, Congress has almost never stopped a military campaign once it's already begun, and when it's done, it's never been through a congressional resolution like what they just tried to do. Vietnam is a good example of that. What they did was they approved the war just like they did this one. But when they got tired of it, they cut off the money. That's what Congress did. They started voting against having them get the financing. So that's what I predict that's going to happen with this. We're going to have some people jump off the bandwagon as their elections come up and they have a constituency that they need to get to vote for them. And then when we get to 2028, you're going to start seeing Congress shutting down the money if things aren't working out for them. But as far as them voting for them to stop a war, I don't think you'll see it in your lifetime. It looks bad on your resume.
Oh, I agree. I don't think they're going to stop the war. I also don't. So I don't. Maybe you and I are not agreeing on this. I don't see this thing going very long. I don't think it's going to go that long. I mean, I just don't. Based on what I've seen so far, and what is this, day 7, something like that? When we're recording this, I think we're on day 7. What I see is, and this is just physical numbers. When I say this is both sides, are going to run out of ammunition. Okay, to keep it real simple, Iran is definitely going to run out of firepower, and with air superiority, which we largely have now, we're taking out more and more of their ability to fire things. So I would say within the next couple days, certainly within a week, Iran is not going to be shooting anything at anybody. That's not to say that there can't be, what ended up happening in both Iraq and Afghanistan, where you've got rebels, hiding out in caves and with shoulder-mounted, missiles or whatever that running around. I mean, it's hard to stop everybody, but I think largely they're going to run out of missiles. Run out of drones, and quite frankly, so are our allies have already expressed concern that if this keeps up and they have to keep shooting down as this. So one of the things that I heard the other day is that I think it was Oman and Kuwait were starting to get concerned that based on the amount of incoming that they had to take out, that they only had a short window of time before they were going to run out of anti missile capability. So what that means is, and they kind of went back and leaned on Israel and the United States and quite frankly our European allies and said, look, you got to take care of business here. You got to get these guys to stop firing because we're going to be in trouble and we won't be able to protect us or your bases. So I just don't see it going that far. I think we've pounded the living shit out of them, to be honest with you. And they now have hit, I don't want to say they've hit 13 different countries. I mean, they've now sucked in, there was a missile going towards Turkey. There was one that landed in Azerbaijan, a drone strike. So, I mean, those are, arguably, they're not even in the Middle East. So this is a lot of countries involved. Europeans have now acquiesced. They're starting to send firepower in themselves. And some of the Middle Eastern countries have got involved now, shot down 2 planes yesterday. So I think Iran's screwed. This is my personal opinion.
So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, well, go ahead.
No, I was going to end it. I was going to say that we're going to get into the details of everything that you're talking about later. But if you got something further to say, go ahead.
Well, I guess what I would leave it on is that doesn't mean that the problem is solved. Okay.
Oh, I agree.
What it means is that the war, quote, war, meaning firing missiles, running bomber runs, will come to a conclusion. And at that point, Unfortunately, the way that the Americans' minds work, particularly in politics, well, then the problem is solved. There's no more war going on. That doesn't mean that the threat is taken away. It doesn't mean what may or may not be going on the ground. And we're going to address some of that later on here, I think, as well. So that's what I wanted to leave it with. But we'll get back to Iran. Don't worry, we're not done.
So, Mike, history makes people skeptical. We were told Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and that intelligence turned out to be wrong. Yet it justified a massive military intervention. Now with Iran, the drumbeat is starting to sound familiar. Warnings about nuclear threats, urgency, and talk of military action. So the question is, are we watching legitimate intelligence unfold, or the early stages of another narrative being built to justify a war?
Well, this time, unlike Iraq, the Independent Commission on Nuclear Energy, or whatever, which is European based, I believe, that was formally assessing Iran and going in and inspecting their facilities. And I just heard this yesterday, said that they have, I forget what it was, 600 pounds of 60% uranium or something, some amount, which, by the way, was backed by Iran's foreign minister on a talk show on CNN yesterday, admitted to that. And so they have that. That's a real thing. I'm not saying it's weapons grade, but there is, and he said it is enough to make 10.2 nuclear bombs. This came out of Iran's mouth. This does not come from Donald Trump.
They've been talking like they bigger and badder than they are throughout this conflict.
Understand.
I would never think that they would say they have less.
Correct. However, my point to the whole thing is that you have an independent agency that is saying that they have that material and has said that it could make 10 bombs, and they're admitting to that. So that's not to say that they were aggressively making bombs or trying to, but it's a stronger argument than Iraq. Let's just put it that way.
You could be 110% right. I don't know what the right answer is, but hearing what you're saying and what I just asked you, it sounds like to me basically you're going with the narrative. And I'm not saying the narrative is wrong, but you are legitimizing an organization because everybody says it's a legitimate organization. And that's where I'm drawing the parallel, is that there were legitimate organizations that were backing what America was saying in the first one. So it's a matter of, do you trust that organization? Do you trust this information? Or do you think that it's the same old, same old? And for me, I go with the same old, because it's usually never something new. My predictions are pretty accurate because I just follow history, and that's what we've been doing. So that's what I think we'll keep doing.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference though is that Saddam Hussein was interested in being a dictator. He was interested in being wealthy. He was interested in controlling his country. He occasionally talked some smack.
Sound like Khomeini to me.
Big difference between the two. Khomeini and the Iranians are religious fucking whack jobs.
Only difference.
That's a big difference because their mantra is very similar to the Christians during the Crusades and whatnot. Their mission is to go out, conquer, control the world, and kill everybody that's not faithful to what their belief is. That's a fact.
I agree with all of that, Mike. But after all is said and done, you've basically just said they do the same thing just for different reasons, because they both have killed large amounts of their own people. They've been very restricted to their people, just for different reasons. One is for religion. One is for his own narcissistic leadership. Yeah,
but here the difference is that I think in the case of the Iranians, that is an external, and Iraq was more of an internal.
Okay.
So So by definition, if they're external, that's a threat to people on the outside. Where Iraq, you could argue, if we left them well enough alone. I mean, I'm going to say something. You want to get controversial on the podcast today? Do you want to get controversial?
Absolutely.
Do you want me to say what I really think?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is going to get me in all sorts of freaking trouble. None of this would be happening without our backing of Israel.
Oh, I agree.
So let me define this in a second. Israel is currently...
You all over the place. Go ahead.
No, I'm not all over the place. It's currently one of the probably most genocidal organizations that's ever existed on Earth. Okay,
I agree.
And they I think I said this on the podcast maybe a couple weeks ago, but like, I give them credit when they say they're going to go screw somebody up. They do, right? America does a lot of hemming and hawing, and we try to play both sides of the fence, and we're there was a bomb dropped in Iran, and it was on a women's children's school, and we're debating whether we did it, they did it, who did it, maybe Iran did it to themselves. We're always trying to play. Israel, it'll be like, oh no, we're just going to go bomb the kids. It's okay. I mean, let's be honest. So none of this would exist without Israel. If we had not supported Israel for the last 50 years plus, there wouldn't be a fight going on in the Middle East. To be honest, Israel wouldn't be there, and because they would have been taken out already. And these other organizations, meaning Dubai and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Iran and Iraq, admittedly, they don't necessarily like each other. I'm not suggesting that they do, but they have a way of coexisting successfully, and they have been. So all of this conflict revolves around Israel. And my point to the whole thing is that you asked me at the top of this why we're there, essentially, kind of why we're there. Is it more excuses about nuclear weapons and whatnot? We're there because Israel, to protect Israel. I mean, that's it. There's no other reason to be there. We sure as hell don't need the fucking oil. We absolutely don't need the oil. We're the biggest oil producer. We do not need the oil at all. 25, 50 years ago, different case. Today, not going to affect us at all. So you can't blame it on oil. You can make up stories about nuclear weapons. But the reality is those nuclear weapons, the chances of a regime like Iran that's basically 50% in Stone Age of making a nuclear weapon with weapons grade plutonium, producing it successfully, putting it in a missile system and delivering it, and being able to make it transcontinental to get to the United States, in my opinion, is zero. Zero chance that they pull that off. Zero. So what we're concerned with is maybe they make a dirty bomb or a nuke or a partial, shitty nuke or whatever, and they were able to touch Israel or one of their neighbors. That's plausible. But was it a direct threat to the United States of America? No way.
The Senate just gave Trump the green light to keep operating against Iran for now. On paper, it looks like total unity. But if you listen to the base, there's a different story brewing. Some supporters don't want another Middle East war. Others are questioning how closely our strategy seems tied to Israel. And a few politicians may be reading the polls with elections coming up. So the vote says unity, but the mood underneath says something else. Mike, are we looking at the early signs of a fracture inside Trump's movement over Iran? We've had Tucker Carlson, you got Megyn Kelly, you got Matt Walsh, you got a lot of big names out there that are totally destroying Trump about this war.
I think people, and this is my prediction, and I think this is indicative of both the conservative side and the liberal side. I think both sides are tiring of Israel, to be quite frank. And I think that the excuses that one side or the other over the course of many years to either defend Israel or give them a pass or whatever, they're running out. It's running thin, to be honest. It is hard for anybody regardless of what political side you're on, to look at some of the stuff that they have done and some of their motivations and say that this is cool, if you at the same time don't think it's cool for Castro or Maduro or Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or the whack jobs in Iran. I mean, they're no different, right? So I think that their welcome mat is wearing thin. I do, and you see it, like you said, Tucker Carlson and a lot of these big names have departed from Trump because Trump has towed the line very closely with Netanyahu, which, by the way, is not different or outside of what his party had been doing for years. But I think it's just they're getting tired of it, and I think
so. Let me get it clear what you're saying. Is the backlash primarily about avoiding Middle East war, or is it our alignment with Israel?
I think it's the alignment with Israel.
Okay.
I don't think I think everybody knows that we're not having a Middle East war if Israel didn't exist, or we weren't backing them up, because what would we be fighting? Iran wouldn't even be worth fighting against.
Iran would have never been mad at us about anything.
Exactly. They wouldn't be mad at us in the first place. That's exactly right.
We've basically joined the Middle East in their battles. If we've
joined Israel, and they look at us no differently than they look at Israel.
I agree, but our finger is all over the Middle East, even beyond it. I agree with what you said, but
it is.
like our relationships with Saudi Arabia, has a lot to do with military actions that we make. Now, it may be secondary to Israel, but it does exist. Are we
the difference there is the religious intensity, meaning that, like, we have made deals with Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and many of the other countries there, Jordan, based on us a mutual understanding, meaning that we've sold them weapons. They've made deals with us for infrastructure and oil and finance and whatnot, and they have grudgingly went along and I'll call it cooled it towards Israel, meaning that they don't like them, but they're just sitting in the back seat. The countries that we are having conflicts with are directly against Israel and are unwilling to compromise, meaning large parts of Lebanon, Iran, Iraq had this problem, Syria. Those countries have not gotten to the same level of communication. But the problem is the more that we stay tied to here's my fear. The more we stay tied to Israel, eventually, just take a Saudi Arabia as an example. We can't really afford to have them just be like, we don't like America anymore. Like, I mean, these are big financial powers. So we have to we have to tread treaded very carefully on both sides of that equation. But let's put it this way. In my opinion, Israel is not making this easy. I mean, they're not making it easy. They're uncontrolled. Over the last couple of years, they've become, particularly with Netanyahu, has become almost, deranged. So, by the way, don't take this the wrong way out there if you're listening to me bitch and moan about Israel. I get it. I get why Israel went into, I thought it was genius, to be honest with you, going into Gaza and taking out Hamas and firing on Hezbollah, and quite frankly going after, we said this last year when we went after Iran, and now going after them again. They are capitalizing on the fact that they have a very short window of opportunity where there's no Russia, there's no China, because they've been both proven like they're completely incompetent. and pulled out. This is the timing. They look at this and go, "It's time. We need to destroy them now while we got the chance." So I'm not taking that away from them. I understand why they're doing it.
Mike, we got a compliment from some listeners.
No way.
Yeah. Well, they were talking to me, but I'm including you. They were basically they were saying that we're right on a lot of stuff. It seemed like we know what we're talking about. And he was asking like, where do I get my predictions from? And from the start, I've been telling people since like almost the first week of Trump's presidency, what have I been just saying over and over again? Look at a map. When the United States flooded the Caribbean with carriers, destroyers, F-35s, and thousands of troops, we were told it was about Venezuela and narcotics. But the scale was massive, the largest buildup in that region in generations. To me, that looked like a Trojan horse. Venezuela wasn't the end game, it was the stepping stone. Lock down Caribbean logistics, secure Venezuelan oil, and suddenly the U.S. can sustain a long campaign in the Middle East without worrying about fuel disruptions. Now we're hearing Iran's strategy is to wait out American ammunition and infrastructure limits. But if the Caribbean buildup solved logistic and energy first, that strategy may already be countered. Mike, does that look like coincidence or does it look like long-range strategic positioning?
Oh, it's long-range positioning. It's not coincidence. I mean, and you also got to bring in Cuba on this. I talked to my buddy John in Cuba the other day.
Yeah, we're going to get all into Cuba in just a little bit.
Okay, so I'll get into that after though. But yes, it's all connected, meaning that, and it's a big FU in the face of Russia and China as well, because we're basically showing on the world stage that two things. One, we've just taken away cheap oil from Venezuela. We've taken away cheap oil from Iran going out to people that were buying, quote, black market oil. And then two, both of these countries, we've seen their weapon systems, modern weapon systems that were supplied in both cases by China, don't work. Like they're pieces of garbage, really, when it comes down to it. So, they're got to be sitting there. Putin and what's his name in China got to be sitting there with their head in their lap, going, shaking their head, going, "Oh, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good." I mean, the only advantage I think maybe Putin is like, God, I hope U.S. uses up a lot of their firepower and they can't send it to Ukraine, and that's the only positive I can see for Russia.
So. There was the biggest argument against this was what it was going to do to fuel costs for the U.S. citizenry and for industry in America and everything. And we had a big economic spike on the stock exchange, but stock market is back to normal, and the dollar per barrel of oil is back to its original price. And just like I mentioned, we've got plenty of oil coming from Venezuela. We've got the strategic positioning that I keep talking about of where Venezuela is, plus we're in the Caribbean. The only worries that we have, you mentioned earlier, is we've got to get our ammunition production up. And who's to say that we don't have some factories already working on that? I hope so, because if not, that is the only chink in our armor now is replenishing ammunitions.
So I read an interesting article on that. Trump's meeting, I think, at the White House today or tomorrow with a bunch of those companies. So that the focus is clearly on that. Our weakness is the really expensive, very precision, high dollar amount ammunition, the missiles. The good news is that stuff tends to be used at the beginning of the campaign, which we use in the first couple of days. Now that we have air superiority over much of Iran, they can go in with much lower cost stuff that we have way more available and is mass produced, and just take out the rest of their their rocket launchers and whatnot. So So I think that may be less of a concern. I mean, overall, it's a concern. I mean, even the Biden administration said it at the time. They were concerned with drawing down too much firepower in the U.S. military by sending it to Ukraine. So, I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, obviously, nobody has an infinite amount of weapons. I mean, just the way it is.
And for our listeners who haven't been keeping up with the war, we have destroyed their communications and radar systems so bad that we could take a Cessna airplane, fly at above 200 feet, and just push a bomb out the back window and not worry about it.
Yeah, pretty much. I could fly a 172 Cessna over there right now. And yeah, exactly. Phil, get in the back. We push the thing out the door and land it on something, and we're not getting shot out of the sky. I mean, and we're laughing about this, but that took a lot of planning, strategy, and a lot of bombs for sure. But it also highlights why the Chinese and the Russians are really militarily pretty weak powers.
So Ecuador just launched a joint military operation with the United States targeting organized crime groups tied to the cocaine trade. But neither government is saying exactly where these operations are happening or how large they are. We know helicopters are involved in Special Forces cooperation was requested earlier this year, but the details are completely hidden. Mike, I don't have a formal question for you. Do you see the connection to everything that we're talking about now? Ecuador has cut off oil basically to Colombia. And on top of that, Colombia is being given an ultimatum that the only way that they can still get oil is for them to for them to help them with the capture of these cartels and the control of them. And on top of that, they just kicked out the Cuban ambassadors. I think you were going to tell me something about the ambassadors, but can you tie all that up together?
Well, I mean, I could tie it up in one simple phrase. The U.S. is finally playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers. So, I mean, we are moving pieces around strategically. It's funny that you brought up Ecuador, because I was thinking to myself going, we're all worried about, I hear all this dialogue on CNN and Fox News talking about, running out of ammo and all this stuff. And meanwhile, I'm reading this other story where we're sending down these short range missiles and stuff and helicopters and whatnot. And we're firing away out down in Ecuador, but nobody's even mentioned that. Like, that's not even I don't even think that's on a most Americans' radar, but it's going on, and it continues this. I'll call it circle of influence that we started in Venezuela. We're obviously putting a heavy shoulder on Mexico. We've got the Cuba thing sitting there, but you mentioned Ecuador and Colombia and all these things. So they're all tied together for sure. And our foothold. Here's the thing: is to go back on what I said earlier about us getting thin on Israel. There is a justification to keep a strong presence in the Middle East because, I mean, once again, it keeps our footprint and our foothold in that area. And if we indeed foresee a future where we might not be as, quote, tight with Israel, particularly because Americans, the population, frowns upon it, we don't want enemies there. So that could be a legitimate argument to have a regime change in Iran, as an example, and put more of somebody that's going to be more pro-American in place there.
So I see several things going on here. Okay, so let's start first with Venezuela. One of the first things I mentioned to people was look on a map, look where Venezuela is. Yes, there's oil, but it's a strategic position. It literally almost sticks out into the ocean. When you look at Ecuador, it's on the other side of the continent, and it's almost the same thing geographically where it sticks out. And it's literally the ideal protection point for shipping going through the canal from the east. So we've got both sides of the canal. We've got both oceans set up militarily. That's underlyingly what's happening. The second thing is when we started messing with Venezuela, Colombia started talking big and bad, like they weren't going to, be involved, and they were independent and F Trump. And Trump said he had something for them, and that's what it is. He's squeezing them right now out of the oil, and he's literally he's crushing Colombia. I don't even think that there'll be a resolution between Ecuador and Colombia. And the only reason why Ecuador has our military there for these cartel operations is because they see what's going on. They saw how Colombia's being treated. They see how Venezuela's being treated. And they're like, hey, we need to ally with America instead of trying to fight with them. So they just basically seeing things clearly. But the bottom line is all of this is to set us up and people listening, look up what a military stepping stone is so you'll understand what I'm saying. They're making that whole region a stepping stone for war. It'll be the perfect place for shipping. It's the perfect place to have extra ammunitions. It sticks out from the rest of the continent, so it's a great logistical point militarily. There's more strategy going on than Trump gets credit for. And I've been seeing it all along, and I wish somebody would just pick up a damn map. I'm starting to hear people say, look at the map now.
And while we're talking about maps, by the way, look at what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, there's 2 points, the Sea or the Strait of Hormuz, which is a critical shipping point, which is bordered by Iran, which is what we're involved in, and then the Suez Canal, which is we're also heavily involved in because that's between Egypt, or is in Egypt, but it's very close to Gaza Strip and everything else over there. So, and that's what you want. Look, shipping, control of moving goods, whoever controls that controls the world. End of story.
I agree with that. So let's bring this all the way around, Mike. We've been told China is the next global military superpower, but look at the Middle East right now. Beijing isn't projecting force there at all. Meanwhile, Iran is struggling with communications and naval systems that include Chinese-made equipment. So, Mike, does this show China's real military reach is limited and that either the gear they sell overseas isn't nearly as capable as people thought, or the stuff they keep for themselves might not be that impressive either?
Oh, I think the Chinese military is garbage. I'm not worried about them at all. I think that they've shown that they may have technology and they may have the ability to build things. There's a big difference between understanding how to build something and understanding how it works and what it works with in real life. And what you've seen both in Venezuela and in Iran is that they have very advanced systems that if you pull out one small pin, the whole thing goes down. And we've been able to overcome their systems. You saw it in Venezuela originally, but here, once again, you see it in Iran. We dismantled their defense mechanism in a matter of seconds, not hours. So, no, I think, and by the way, you also have seen that China and Russia, for all their foot stomping, and they barely made a peep about this, quite frankly. They're just keeping quiet.
So I think this crushes China in 4 different ways. One is, with all the things we've talked about so far, that's about 95% of the oil imports to their country that we now have control of.
Yep.
The next thing is China. You remember they had that great big display of war stuff and they had all the people come to the country to look at it and everything?
Yep.
Okay, so either you bought it or you were thinking about it. If you've bought it, now you're wondering, do you have some junk? And if you were thinking about buying it, you're like, why would I buy that?
Exactly.
And the fourth thing that comes up is, okay, we might sell our junk to somebody else, but the stuff is so bad that now you wonder, what what's the quality of the stuff that you kept for yourself?
And it's interesting that in Iran is a great example of all this. The Iranian made stuff, meaning their drones, which by the way Russia's buying to take on Ukraine, is better than the Russian and the Chinese stuff. So now you've got Iran is actually producing better weapons than the two of them.
Well, I remember when we were talking about that great big military buildup and show that they did, you immediately were like, all that stuff is fake and whatever. And I kind of didn't. So I'm conceding that fact to you. I think you were on point about that. But this has exposed them. All the things that I mentioned to you affects them money wise. If they don't have oil, that affects them financially. If people aren't buying their military goods, that affects them. If people aren't afraid of them anymore militarily, that affects them monetarily. That affects how they can negotiate, or even if someone wants to negotiate with them. The reason why a lot of countries, a lot of continents have accepted China and their negotiations and their offers is because they thought that they were a real world power.
Yep.
And that's pretty much.
Let's be clear. A lot of this is financial because, I mean, obviously China can go out and buy oil from somebody else, but they've been buying oil from black markets and from the cheapest source. And we've successfully taken that away. So now they're going to have to buy oil from, Saudi Arabia or somebody else at regular market prices. So that's going to financially impact them.
Well, let's look at the oil. Let's look at the actual oil and get scientific for a second. There are different qualities of oil out there. And I think it's called dark oil or black oil. It's the best kind of oil. It's the thickest oil. And we are basically in control of the majority of it now. So the oil that they would go out and pay for, they're going to pay more for and actually squeeze less out of it. Once you process it, they're getting less. So it's still going to affect them. It's not like they just get some oil from somewhere else. They're getting lesser oil, and it's going to cost right. So
more expensive to refine. So I mean that's a reality, and so to tie it back all together, Phil. Yes, to answer your original proposition here is all of this stuff is tied together. This is a game of chess, and I personally think that the U.S. is winning. Is winning big. Now, that's not to say that it's a complete win. I mean, the win is on the side of financial, it's on the side of military, it's on the side of controlling public opinion. We can talk about that on another podcast. I mean, that certainly is an issue, and some of that is tied to our heavy support. Even the European allies have been like, I think they're shaking their head about how joined at the hip we are with Israel. And some of that is tied to, suddenly we become a country that it looks like we're shooting bombs everywhere. So, I mean, that's not necessarily winning the public opinion parade, but we are certainly winning the other options here.
As we get closer to the end of the show, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge the 6 service members who have lost their life in this military operation. Rest in peace and respect to you for your service. With that said, Mike, I looked into it. There was only like one young person out of that whole group. We kind of have it in our minds that the people going to war for us are people fresh out of high school, teenagers in their early 20s. But all of these people were like in their 40s. One of them was even in his 50s. Do we have an old army, or is it just so happens that a bunch of older people got hurt?
I think in their case they were manning some kind of intelligence facility there, right, or something, or command and control. So they might have been, because I heard it was
Mike, I feel sorry for them because I'm looking at a couple of the guys, and I'm looking at their stature. I'll just say it like that, and I'm like, these guys were not ready for war. They were not thinking they were about to go to war. You know.
Well, and the other thing is I don't know if that got hit by accident or not, because my understanding was it was a temporary facility. It was like a double wide trailer thing set up. So I don't know if that was even a permanent thing, and whether or not it was actually targeted or it was just an accident that it got hit. It's terrible. You saw those the friendly fire incident too, where we got our 3 planes shot down. And even that, talk about the pilots themselves, they had some footage of them on the ground. There was the one woman pilot. They were like asking if she was okay. Yeah, I'm all good. And loading up. So, I mean, let's just summarize it. The cross section of our military is, I think, one of the reasons that it's so good is that we have all ages. We have, women and men and all sorts of walks of life that are in there. And we obviously have, you can rain on the parade all you want, particularly the left seems to be, I always feel like they don't give the military enough credit, but these are some of the best. And many of these people are very skilled, very intelligent, and we have a really smart military in the United States, because it takes a lot more than, and by the way, that's one of the problems I think with the Chinese and some of this other Russian infrastructure and weapons, is that they might have the ability to build the shit, but the intelligence is lacking, right? And we have thought it out. You got to know how to use it, right? I mean, that's the most important thing. You can have a missile all you want, but if you don't know how to use the damn thing or have a strategy behind what you're doing. And for all those out there that, does Trump have a strategy? Look, Trump's not running this operation. Let's just be clear. I mean, let's stay there, keep the politics. He's not running the operation. We have very intelligent, very high-minded military individuals that are running this. And I got to tell you, after day one, you knew that there was some serious skill involved in this plan.
Absolutely, Mike. Not only that, that just made me, I was going to talk about this, and we will talk about it more on another episode. But there's a lot of AI involved in what's going on militarily. Mm-hmm. And it's worked out successfully. But the part that I'm hearing nobody talk about is AI needs to exercise to get better. And this war has allowed America to take basically all their military creations, including AI, and see if they actually work out the kinks. But especially with the AI will even be better now because it's actually been used. So the longer we're there, the longer we use it, the farther apart, the more we separate ourselves as far as our abilities with AI militarily. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So that's a peripheral benefit. I'm saying peripheral, but it's a huge benefit. Like China may have actually thought some of that stuff worked. You don't know until you know. That's why we've had to take bombs and blow them up, because you don't know if it's going to blow anything up until it blows something up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mike, the State Department is just now beginning to send charter flights for American citizens, while days ago other countries have. I just want your quick thought about that. Shouldn't we have gotten them out a long time ago, especially considering that we've known for a long time what was going on?
Yeah, I think that's a fuck up on our part. I mean, we obviously knew longer about this than any of these other countries that are evacuating their citizens. So, the two mistakes I think that we've made so far is one, not protecting our own citizens is the biggest one. Particularly that there's so many of them there, and this relates to the second thing that I think we've done wrong, which I'm glancing at the news as we speak, is that and this is directly tied to this, is that we have threatened our own citizens because we've allowed Iran to expand to too many different countries. And I'm looking at this because we were just talking about stocks and oil prices. The Dow Stock Exchange took a hammer today because of concerns over it spreading outside of the Middle East, because it has. And I just saw an article. The British are sending more planes and aircraft to Cyprus. Because there's now been attacks in Cyprus, in Turkey, in Azerbaijan, in various places that are not considered to be in the Middle East, and that is making people very uncomfortable. But it's also at the same time is threatening more of our citizens that we should have thought about in advance and make sure that they're out of there, because that is a problem.
Another angle on what you just said is, I think a lot of countries are joining in now for a very, very basic reason. We got control of almost everything in the world now: minerals, oils, rare earth, shipping lanes, you name it. If you rob a bank and you don't come, you don't get none. So you got to help us rob the bank.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying?
Well, and I think we've proven that they might not have agreed with us attacking Iran, but now they're seeing the results that Iran is starting to shoot at everybody, and they're like, well, that's not cool. So, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but they're looking at it going, well, this Iran they're bad eggs. We gotta solve this. So Iran is not doing themselves any favor here. I think that everybody's against them.
I agree with everything you said, but I think secondarily they're looking at, hey, America is going to have control of everything. We better help them because we're going to end up asking them for something. So we better help them.
Here's a prediction. We can leave it at this. The U.S. and Israel, for that matter, U.S. isn't really admitting to this, is funding the Turks, for the Kurdish militias. And I think it's going to become clear, and we're going to probably be talking about this next week, that the plan is to create a regime change and a takeover in Iran from the northwest in particular, and have the Kurds come down and start a revolution. I think I can see it happening now. So there's my prediction.
I'm just going to say I agree, because anything I say is going to be long-winded. And we're at the
there
end.
You go. And then we're at the end of the day.
Anything else you want to say, Mike?
That's it.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.